Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome back to 12th Street Talk Back, where transparency is our love language. Freedom Fridays. Welcome, 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 one and all. Thank you for tapping in to the show today, guys. We have a lovely, lovely guest on our roster today, guys. So, sit back, relax, enjoy the conversation. We hope that you get something out of it. I hope everybody's been pouring into themselves today. Your girl's been pouring into herself greatly on this fine, fine, beautiful afternoon that God has decided to bless us in. So, right where you're standing, right where you're sitting, possibly even laying, let's go ahead and give God some praise right now. Heavenly Father, we thank you this day for the fellowship, Father God. Heavenly Father, we thank you for being able to just rest in your arms today. We thank you for your grace and your mercy because we know that it is new every single day. Heavenly Father, as we fellowship today, let those that have ears hear, Father God. May they have open hearts and minds today. Have your way in our lives today. Amen, everybody. Amen. So, guys, this amazing lady I'm about to bring to the show today, she's going to share her story with us. But I want to welcome to the show Jamie Smith, a wife, a writer, a small business owner, advocate, and awareness of disabilities, community organizer, and most of all, a grateful believer in Jesus Christ. Jamie is preparing to publish her first book, which is about how having the heart of an entrepreneur has guided her ability to work through major disabilities, chronic illness, and identifying crises. And yes, even as a business owner, she does all this stuff. So, guys, welcome to the show, Jamie Smith. Welcome, Jamie. How are you this fine, fine Friday?
I am doing well. How are you, Victoria?
I am doing well. I'm feeling blessed. I'm so happy to have you here to share your
Okay.
amazing story. We are just trucking right along this afternoon. And, you know, when we talked previously, I just enjoyed our conversation so much. But
Hmm.
since I know and my audience doesn't know, tell us a little about who Jamie Smith is today.
Well, I feel like you captured my different roles in the introduction. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
But we are all more than the hats we wear. Would you all agree? I think that it's hard to capture yourself all in one statement, but um, I was born and raised in Wichita, Kansas. I tell people that I grew up in Wichita and became a grown up in Northwest Arkansas because I went away to college in Northwest Arkansas. And except for a year and a half when I lived in Oklahoma, I have lived here my entire adult life. And
Mhm,
so that's, where we live and shapes who we are.
mhm,
But other than that, I'm a writer by trade. I started in journalism and I still do a little bit of community journalism professionally. And then I also have owned a writing business called Jamie's Notebook, where I ghostwrite for people. I mostly do blogs, website writing, newsletter writing, email chain writing, that kind of thing. But then I'm also kind of transitioning my career to be more of an author and a speaker. And
mhm.
so I'm wanting to maybe show what God has turned me into and offer some of the things that I have and not just help other people tell their stories. But it's time I start telling a little bit of my own.
That's right. That's right. Especially a writer by trade. Jamie's notebooks. What do we get out of Jamie notebook? Or is that something that you just do professionally under your ghostwriting?
Well, that's my business, and my
Okay.
book is kind of under it. I'm building kind of a separate brand, but still trying to figure out what that looks like because it's all Jamie.
That's awesome.
Jamie's notebook is Jamie, and Jamie's books is Jamie. So,
So we're gonna
um,
get an inside peek of Jamie.
right. So it's interesting because when we talk about writing in different voices,
Mhm.
I write in my clients' voices, and I realized, and I thought, oh well, I've written in my own voice as long as I can remember because I was a news writer. Well, if you ever
Mm-hmm.
go on TikTok or YouTube and you can hear, um, you can hear different people will that are like in the broadcasting industry, and they will, use their newscaster voice, and then they talk like they normally do, like a human being. And
Mm-hmm.
it's
Mm-hmm.
completely different, but it's still them. It's still recognizable as them. And so I'm finding my Jamie voice is what I'm going to
You're
start
finding
calling
your
it.
Jamie voice. So you spoke about this book. How is that going? Do we have a title or we're just flying by the seat of our pants and just letting Jamie's thoughts come out of her head down on paper?
So Jamie's Notebook, I'm sorry, Destination Changes is the name of the book,
Oh,
and
yay.
here's where it's based out of. So the whole idea is that people will tell us that life is about the journey, not the
Mhm.
destination. But what they don't tell you is the destination changes. Go
Mhm.
through life, we think we have this goal. We think we know what life is supposed to look like. We think we know what we're going to do for the rest of our lives. We think we know all these different ways we're going to land.
Mhm.
Well, and then major life things happen. And not only does it change our ability to accomplish those goals, but it changes the goal itself. And so
Mhm.
throughout my entire life, because I was born with spina bifida, it's a major birth defect. It's one of the most major ones in the world. People have always asked me, or they've made the statement, I don't know how you do it. And they mean, I don't know how you function in life. I don't know how you do all of this. So
Mhm.
I jokingly tell people that my book is the 17 chapter answer to that question. So
Wow.
it talks about how having the heart of an entrepreneur, like the soft skills of an entrepreneur that have been
Mhm.
ingrained in me since I was a child, never thinking I would ever own a business. I always said I would never own my own business.
Mhm.
But having those different soft skills ingrained in me got me through life with a disability as a child. But then I also used a lot of those same skills to start my business. And then
Mhm.
later, in the last 8 or 9 years or so, I've developed various chronic illnesses that have made me have to cut back to, instead of working the traditional 160 hours a week that most people do, it may sound like a lot, but that's actually 40 hours a week.
Mhm.
I can work about 20 to 25 a month. I said
Wow.
160 hours a week. I meant a month.
Yeah, a
A
month.
month.
Yeah,
160 hours
I
a month.
gotcha.
Yeah. Your listeners are like mathing how much I work, and she was like, okay, so was an alcoholic, she was a workaholic. No, I wasn't. Instead of working a traditional work week, I can only work about 25 hours a month just
Wow.
because of my health. So I've figured out ways to still be able to work, to still be productive, but
Mhm.
still manage my health and manage life and family and all of that.
Oh, I definitely get it. 3 years ago, I had 3 back surgeries during the pandemic. So I
Oh,
know how it's like to go from working a traditional 40-hour week, which is 80 hours every 2 weeks, 160 hours a month, to
mm,
working none because the things that your mind tell you you can do, your body won't let you do them sometimes, and I
your
was just
body's like,
having
that's
this
cute.
conversation. Yeah, my body's like, "Yeah, you think that you can do that." And I was just having a conversation with someone actually about that this morning, and I was saying, my mind tells me that I can do these things. My body don't want to cooperate. And I said, even when you still see me happy and chipper and moving around, I have grown so accustomed to constantly being in pain
Yeah,
that it's second nature. So I think sometimes society can say sometimes that, oh, there's nothing wrong with her. That's because we've live with the pain so much. We know what to expect. We know how the day is going to go if I don't use my cane or if I do this or if I do too much of that. And we just learn to live with it. It does not mean that we're not in pain. And then, of course, if we're on medications that mask the pain, it does not help with fixing the problem so we can get back to our everyday life. And I would love nothing more than to get back to my everyday life. I've been working since I was 14 years old. So
yeah,
I don't know
same.
anything other than work.
Right, right. And we're pretty close in age, so we've worked for 30 years and we're used to it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's I remember teasing my parents, my mom especially, because I come from a single parent home, um, about how she would just always moan and groan about arthritis or gout in her knees. Now I can understand, especially because she went through it's kind of like I'm doing a repeat. She had a major back surgery. She had to learn how to walk all over again. I had a major back surgery. Of course, since then, times has changed. So with her learning all how to walk all the way over again, it was a little bit more difficult for her. For us, we have so much put in place, so many new things and technology and the different ideas that the doctors have amazingly come up with to help us get out of certain situations. I was just speaking with somebody about hysterectomies and having fibroids, and I said, I had fibroids, and my sisters who had fibroids and partial hysterectomies and full hysterectomies, they were telling me, go ahead and get the surgery. But in this day and age, I had one last year. My doctor was like, no, not so much anymore. And we did the laser thing. We did the shaving down. So there's so many different ways to do things. But also, when you have major chronic illness and pains, nobody knows what you're going through but you. The doctors don't even know.
Right.
They can't tell you what your pain level is.
Well, and they don't, what people don't understand is the emotional toll that chronic illness takes.
Mhm.
And so yeah, it takes a lot.
It takes
So,
a lot. It takes a lot. Well, in my introductory, I introduced you as a grateful believer in Jesus Christ. How important is your faith to you, especially with the many hats that you wear, as well as your chronic illnesses?
well, that's actually, if you don't mind, if I answer that with the 3 R's that we talked about,
Yes, go
is
right
that
ahead.
fine?
Jump right
So,
in.
talking about that, um, I've in a lot of ways, it's the only thing that's kept me going.
Mhm.
But he's also seen me through crisis of faith because even just in the last year, I'm like, God, I've been obedient. This is what you've told me to do. This is what you've guided me towards. This is what you want me to do. Why is it this hard? Why? And
Mhm.
so I was like, I trusted you, God, and that it's really just really painful. What's the deal? I felt betrayed. And
Mhm.
so that's something I'm coming out of now. And I just decided my word for the year, I'll explain one word practice here in a second, but my word for the year is trust, because it goes along with the previous words that I've chosen. And just for those of you who don't know, the one word practice is an idea that you choose one word as your theme for the year. And I've done
Mhm.
this for over 10 years. Sometimes my word has been the word enough. Sometimes it's been the word just be, teaching me to just be, be still, be
Mhm.
quiet, be the different things and be who I'm supposed to be. But the last 3 years, I feel like I've been on a journey, and it started with the word reframe. And so, even in my book, I talk about reframing the word reframe because
Mhm.
most people think reframing is turning lemons into lemonade. Well,
Yes.
for me, reframing is just turning things around and looking at it from a different angle so that you're getting a full, complete picture, because
Mhm.
if you see it on just one side, you're not going to see everything else around it. So you can see the idea for what it really is, see
Right.
people for who they really are. And so I work to reframe my business, my faith. What does faith in God mean? What does me being in business mean? What is my role?
Mhm.
What's my purpose here? And so I spent a year reframing that. And then I realized in 2023, I was like, okay, I've reframed everything. Now it's got to be put back in place. It was
Mhm.
all upheavaled. I don't think that's a word, but I'm a writer. I'm allowed to make up words. Um,
Mhm.
Evil. And, and so at first my thought was, well, when I realign, my word was going to be realigned. So that was to fix everything, to put everything back the way it was supposed to be. Well,
Mhm.
my initial thought was put it back to where it was supposed to be. Well, that's ridiculous. If it needed to be reframed and shaken up, why would I
Mhm.
want it to go back the way that it was? It needed to
That
be realigned and put the way that God needed it to be. And so I did things like realign my health. I started exercising regularly for the first time in my adult life. I actually joined
Mhm.
CrossFit. I'm a full time wheelchair user. So I joined CrossFit for wheelchair users. I didn't even know you could
Mhm.
do such a thing. It was awesome. And really focusing on my health because I decided I want to live on this earth a little longer than 45 years old. And
That's
so
right.
I wanted to, put life in those years. And so I've
Mhm.
really been trying to realign my health, but both mentally and physically. I now see a therapist once or twice a week for
Mhm.
various things to help with mental health and really just making sure that I'm taking care of myself, body, mind, and soul, because
Mhm.
God created us as whole beings, right? And so
Mhm.
if one's out of whack, all the rest of it will get out of whack. And
That's
so I've
right.
been focused on that. I've also been realigning my business even more, and that's when I decided at the end of 2023 to shift more into just my husband told me, Jamie, you have been trying to finish this book for 3 years. Finish the book, focus on that.
Mhm.
And I
Mhm.
actually lost 2 clients, not because of anything I did. They had their financial situations changed, and that made me lose 25% of my income.
Wow.
Normally, people would panic. I took a deep breath and said, "Thank you, God, because you are
Yes.
clearly showing me that you have I asked you to pave a way for me to find more
Mhm.
time to work on my book.
Mhm.
Well, I can physically only work those and legally, I can only work that many hours a month." And
Mhm.
so he paved the way by taking away some of my paid work. And so now I, instead of spinning my wheels, proverbially or literally, I, labored over this book. Well, then all of a sudden I was able to finish it up really quick in like 6 weeks. And now it's in,
Wow. Wow.
so
Six
I'm going to be
weeks.
a published author. I'm going to be a published author by the end of this, probably May. And I'm very
Wow.
excited about that and really, really scared because, imposter syndrome, but that's a whole nother topic. So
Well,
I actually,
congratulations first on the book.
thank you.
Congratulations on finishing the book. And it's something that you said there that I wanted to tap into. We never know the way God is going to use us. He'll
Right.
never show us which way He's going to go with something. We may have that idea. We may talk to Him like you and I are talking together now, but He'll
Mhm.
never tell us which way he's going to go. He may go up the mountain around the curve and we thinking he's going to go straight. He'll never let us know. So in losing those 2 clients, it gave you the ability to work hard on something that you've been wanting to do for yourself and as well as with your 3 R's with realigning. So moving into that, tell us what your 3 R's is. Um
So it's the
so
first
that
year.
as we talk about them, they'll know what we're talking about.
Right, right. So the 3 R's, the first year was, I just lost it, was reframe and then realign, and then this year is renew. But my word of the year is trust because I realized that me trying to renew, and you can't renew yourself.
Mhm,
Only you can only be renewed through God.
mhm,
We speak of that in a higher level spiritual sense, but
mhm,
I knew that if this year was going to be successful, if things that I'm trying to heal in my life and things that I feel like I have control over because I'm the one doing the work,
mhm.
that work is only going to be fruitful if God is in it. It's
That's right.
only going to be
That's
fruitful
right.
if God is in it. And so that's why my
That's how
word here is trust, but my 3 R's are um, reframe, realign, and renew.
that's how I started this podcast. I said, well, first of all, I'm a talker. I like to talk all the time,
Oh, me too.
but in everything that I do, since, I developed a relationship or friendship, I like to call it, with our Heavenly Father, I told him when I started this, I don't want to do it if you're not in it. And even before I took my podcast to strictly faith based, I was still talking about things that went on in the world that concerned me, elections and a little bit of reality TV or whatever was hot at the moment. But I did not feel quite right. But every time I started my show with a prayer, and that was my comfort zone. And then my
Right.
prayer went from 2 minutes a day to 10 minutes a day, from 10 minutes a day to a full blown 30 minutes. And I said, I made the promise to you, God. I kept my promise, and look at the increase. Look at the seeds that you helped me plant, and you came along and you watered them and you gave the increase. So when you start to look at life like that and lining everything up, he'll come along and give the increase. I promise you he will. Don't get me started on talking about how faith is just, it's something we got to hold on to.
Mhm.
And we have to put it in practice every single day in everything that we do, no matter how bleak the situation looks. I can be a bubbly, happy person all day. And I have my moments where I'm sidetracked. Sometimes I'm sad or down, but I want to give the best part of me to someone else, no matter how I'm feeling. They get
Right.
to see the best part of me because I feel like if you're pouring into someone else, and God is about love, then when you're spreading love, He's gonna come down, and He's gonna turn my frown upside down into my spirit is happy again about whatever it is that
Mhm.
sidetracked me from what I was going through. So I kind of look at it like that. I like your 3R concept. I did one this year for the no, last year I did one. This year I really stood on the one I did, and mine was action, like I shared
Mhm.
with you before. Last year when I started the show, it was kinda like putting everything back together in my life, not knowing where to start, but I had this phrase, "Did you pour into yourself today?" Because I was pouring back into myself after all the junk, after all the alcohol abuse, and just not knowing where to go, being homeless, rededicating myself to God. I really looked in the mirror and I said, you have got to pour some love back into yourself. You got to give yourself a little bit more grace. And I started with this pouring back into myself, and I started sharing it with the women in my life and on my show. We can't be good for anybody else if we're not any good for ourselves. We got to start with ourselves first. And we have to honestly look in that mirror and be honest with ourselves. If we're not looking in that mirror and can't look at the person that's staring back at you, how can you be honest with the rest of the world? You mentioned imposter syndrome, and I can identify with that.
It it is, it never occurred to me until just now to call it this, but that song "Fear is a Liar"?
Mhm,
Um, imposter syndrome's a liar. It's
mhm.
a form of, I mean, if you're a person of faith and you are getting imposter syndrome, I feel like if you were doing God's work, and I believe I am, and you get imposter syndrome, that's just Satan being a liar, liar.
Mhm, mhm, mhm. And then, it's also about surrounding yourself around people that are like-minded as well. And I'm
Mhm.
not saying that all of us are, because we got some people that have strayed, and all we can do is pray and hope that they get back on the right track. But also surrounding yourself around the right people, having those right conversations. And it's the dialogue doesn't necessarily always have to be biblical, but giving someone a kind word or helping cheer someone up and just staying positive, because sometimes you can get caught up in things that, like I said with the show, once I found out that, this is my happy space. I knew it was my happy space off of the mic and off of the camera and the little bit that I was sharing with my audience at that time. But this is my happy space. This is what makes me happy. Talking about the love of God, talking about Jesus, talking about his word. This is
Mhm.
where I find myself just giddy. Just giddy. And I can talk about it all day. I can talk about it all day. And sometimes we have someone come along and they'll plant something in our ear that kind of shake us and make us second guess ourselves. But as you said, that's the imposter syndrome because that's Satan. He comes to kill, steal, and destroy. So we have to be mindful of um, protecting our ear gates and our
Mhm.
eye gate because my Bible tells me the sin starts in the eye. If it starts in the eye and I start professing different things out of my mouth and listening to different things, then he's got us. He's got us trapped right where he wants us. And, I'm not trying to go back any further. I'm not trying to look in the rear view of my life. I am trying to keep moving forward to see what God has for me. I am so excited about your book coming out, and I hope we get the opportunity to have you back on so you can talk about it a little bit more in detail, maybe come May when it's all said and done. But I want to get back to your reframe, realign, and trust. And what does the reframe look like to you? We talked about the realign, but what does the reframe really look like to you in renewing your trust?
So the reframing, like I mentioned, it's really just looking at things from a different perspective. And
Hmm.
so you and I just did it just now when we looked at imposter syndrome. I always thought of it as lies I tell myself. No, it's not. It's lies Satan tells me because he wants me to not believe in myself.
Mhm,
And I don't mean believe in myself like the weird worldly way, but I mean, God's given
mhm,
me certain talents and he's given me words that need to get out there. And so,
mhm,
if I'm that conduit, telling myself, well, no one's going to care. No one's going to think this is interesting. I'm not a good writer. People tell me I'm too straightforward. I'm not conversational enough. Or, the different remarks that people will make about my writing. I take it as a criticism and when
mm.
it's really just an observation. And
Yes.
so reframing it to see imposter syndrome for what it is, it's not just lies we tell ourselves, it's lies that we allow Satan to pour into us. And
Mhm,
so
mhm.
that was a reframing. Another reframing that I've done professionally, and this is going to sound a little negative, so just hear me out. All right,
Okay,
um,
okay.
those of us who are self-employed and stay-at-home moms and people that basically work from home, people seem to think that we have all the time in the world, that we are busy. They're like, oh, we know you're so busy, but then they are like, we're the first people that they ask to volunteer for stuff because we
Mhm,
have ability during the day because my husband works nights, and so I do a lot of my volunteer work during the day and then I work at night when he's at work.
mhm,
And so um, I had to reframe that to realize, am I losing money by doing that? And
mhm,
so so I ask people to reframe their ideas around asking self-employed people to do that because um, say I earn $50 an hour. I'm just going to make up a price. Say I
mhm,
make $50 an hour. And so if I spend 4 hours volunteering, that's $200 an hour, or that's
mhm,
$200 total. So is that an amount that I'm willing to lose from our budget to donate to that cause? And so
mhm,
the point of this is not, hear me out, y'all, is not to not volunteer, to just focus on the money. But it really helped me by reframing that in my mind, it helped me really realign and learn to because I'm a people pleaser. I'm a very codependent people pleaser. Um,
mhm,
I've had to go into recovery for that. But it helped me realign. Okay, what is my focus? What's my core values? And what drives where I want to spend my time, where I want to spend my
mhm,
time work wise, and where I want to spend my time in my volunteer community organizational space. And so
mhm.
attaching that mental dollar figure to it, it helped me almost place a value on it, as rough as that sounds, and help me ascertain and realign the way that I divided my time and the way that I chose to where I put my energy, not just my time, but my energy.
Mm-hmm.
Because everyone has 24 hours, but those of us with chronic illness, I don't know if you're familiar with the spoon theory, but we only have so many spoons.
Mm-hmm.
So we only have so much time that we can spend doing stuff.
That's right.
So I realigned the way that I did things. I realigned and reframed the way that I worked.
Well, you know, I can identify with a lot of parts in that because I've had those conversations since I've been out of work. And you're the go to person. And not that you don't want to help,
Right.
but you're the go to person. Victoria, she's not working right now. She has a car, or she could do this, or you could volunteer more time for something. And I have this conversation with my hubby as well. When you leave out the door, I'm constantly doing something. And his complaint was, when I come home, you're working on something for the podcast. I said, because I'm so busy throughout the day trying to get things done for the household or something that I volunteered for. When it comes to me, I put all my stuff last, and it just so
Mm,
happened, it seems like time flies throughout the day. Before you know it, you're back home, and I'm just sitting in my chair trying to get some things done for an up and coming show or a guest. And then I feel terrible because you feel neglected. But when is my time? So I do think, some people have a misconception of people that stay at home. My bestie and I talk about this all the time. She's been at home for over 20, 30 years, but she also has a child with autism. So that takes up the bulk of her day. And she said, I fight that fight all the time, as well as being a motivational speaker, getting
mhm,
involved in church and definitely in the school system and trying to spread the word about autism. And I said, I don't know how you did it. I feel like I do more now that I'm not working than I did when I was working, because I think a little small part of us, and I can say me, um, when you at work, you have time to place your thoughts, if that makes sense. Like, you're
mhm,
working, but you have more time to place your thoughts and organize your week, your day. But when you are at home, I feel like there's an expectation there from other people that I should be doing something for them, perhaps, because I've got all this free time on my hand. And it's just simply not realistic at all, because you're
right.
so busy trying to be that people pleaser. That's something that I had to break out of my shell of, just trying to please everybody. And sometimes I'll walk around and I'll talk to myself and I'll say, you know what, Victoria, you can't please everybody. Even in the podcasting world, you know, you got so many favorites and you make so many friends and you want to listen to everybody's show. But even with you being a stay at home mom or a stay at home wife like I am, it's not a 8 hour day of all I can do is sit around and listen to podcasts. I still have everyday things that I need to do, as well as I still got a husband to attend to. I still have young adults that may need me. I still got mother-in-law and father-in-law that's elderly that may need a ride to the doctor, and then I've got to sit there. And those are the moments that I squeeze in to do my extra little stuff, like listen to podcasts and things like that.
Mhm.
But it is a big misconception from people to think that just because you stay at home, you got a whole lot of time on your hands. And it goes back to what you were saying about realigning, because you went from a 40-hour work week or a 160-hour month work week down to 25 hours, 25% of that. And we've got to learn how to make some income somewhere. I used to Uber a little bit on the side, to try to fit in some extra money for me. So I don't think that, for us women or men, because we got a lot of stay at home men now, um, that there is not enough time in the day to please everyone that we want to please. In
Right,
doing so,
right.
somebody gets left out. So, what is something that you put in practice to stay focused with all your many hats, with your action words, with your book, uh, just being an advocate for disability? What is something that you practice to stay focused in all the areas of your life?
Well, and we actually, I don't think we talked about this one, but something that I'm doing right now that is what I'm calling a mental health exercise. It's literally helping me keep sane is, and I'm one of those people that has to get it out there. I'm an external processor, and I know that if
Mhm.
I just, journal it and write it down, that I will just sit there and the wheels will just keep turning. They'll just keep turning.
Are you a 150%er like me? You put
Yeah,
your
maybe.
150% into everything you do?
Well, yes, and I have anxiety. So, what I do is I do what I'm calling a daily check-in, where I talk about this is how I spent my morning, this is how I spent my afternoon. Now I'm going to do this, and it's not. I
Mhm.
don't say every single thing I did. It's not a look at how productive I was. It
Yeah,
was
right.
it was a check-in for myself, but also trying to model it for other people. Part of my day is taking care of myself. It's exercise class or health appointments. I average 2 to 3 health appointments a week.
Wow.
And so sometimes those are all in one day because of my planning abilities. But 2 to 3 health related visits a week. And so I've got that. And then I have exercise class twice a week. And then I've got volunteer work. And then I've got the book time. And then I've got household work time. And then I've got client work time.
Mhm.
And so I have to acknowledge all of that so that I can see it in front of me. Yes, A, I did accomplish it, but B, um, I can now put that aside now. I can
Mhm.
lay that down now. And
And how
so,
does that work for you? Because I need that. I think we were speaking a little bit before we came on, and I was like, "Man, sometimes I feel like I need an assistant because I'm wearing so many hats and I miss stuff." How does that work from you, compartmentalizing like that?
uh, it's it's working right now. It's really hard when things get out of balance. And so I've really struggled with balance my whole life. And so I feel like in the last year, I'm finding that balance just by forcing myself, and
Mhm.
really, forcing myself to spend time on the home, in the home, and with my husband, and really just making that besides my relationship with God, making that my primary relationship,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
not getting sucked into to bright shiny things.
Yeah, we can get sucked in, and my husband used to tease me about that when we first married 8 years ago. He said, "You love shiny things." And the more that I've grown in my walk with God, the less important that stuff became. And as well, I did not, did not, did not. I was like, no, no. He said, I can dangle something shiny in front of you. You like shiny things. Of course, he was speaking from the perspective of, glitter, diamonds, anything that glitters. And I thought. But he was talking about me within. Anything that makes you shine, that's what you
Mhm.
like. And as I started to work on myself, it didn't seem so important anymore. So now I'm so happy about my relationship with our Heavenly Father because He shows me me. And we have to ask Him that God, show us our heart. And sometimes it does not look pretty, but the not looking pretty, I like to explain, especially to my young women, everything is not going to look pretty. Everything's not going to be pretty and lined with lace and gold. If you did those things, if you said that, if you hurt someone, He's not bringing your past to you for you to feel bad and just give up on the walk. He's bringing your past to you to show you yourself so that you can make the conscious effort to change those things and the way that you used to walk. Because again, this is a new walk. Nobody's going to get it perfect. I still like, my hair, my makeup, and all that good stuff. But what God has etched across the table of my heart. He had to break all that stuff down first before
Mhm.
I could start to do the outside work again. And he's still working on the inside of me, but I believe he's done an excellent job and from the coming from the person that I used to be into the woman that I've grown in now. And I tell people the last couple of years with my walk, I have grown into the woman that God knew me to be when he said in his word, he knew me when I was in my mom's womb. I knew you when you was in your mother's womb. I know every strand of hair that's on your head. So he knew the plan that he had for me. And we do get sidetracked by Satan. We do get sidetracked about people, places, and things. And that's the cleanup. That's the walk. Being able to look at yourself and clean up some of that superficial stuff, clean up your frame of mind, and once you start to renew the inside, then you can go back to the outside. That's just my personal belief.
Mhm.
So,
Yep.
l so let's move on. So I can ramble all day, I'm sorry. Let's
No,
move
no,
on.
please.
You talked about your one-word practices, so we've already gone there, and I talked to you briefly a little bit earlier about, giving back to the community because you said you're an advocate for disabilities and giving back to the community. Talk to us a little bit about how you give back to the community. I also that is actually my uh, slogan for 12th Street Talk Back, where transparency is our love language and bridging the gap of communication amongst our generation. I think there is a generational gap there between our seasoned people and the younger generation. If we could just
Mhm,
bridge that gap
mhm.
and listen a little bit more, um, as a mother of three young adults, I feel like I've learned a lot in doing this, and I'm learning to listen, not to combat, but actually listen to understand whether I agree or not. And then I want to spread that around the community. Let's listen to each other. Let's see who we can help today. And my slogan is God, what can I do for you today? Because you've given so much to me. What can I do for God today? What does that look like? Giving back to your community and being an advocate for people with disabilities.
So for me, that's those are 2 different things, and they go together.
Mhm.
Um, when people say giving back to your community, I instantly think of the nonprofit that I helped co-found, which is called Elkins Community Network. I live in so I don't know if you saw me square up when you said that. I was like, "Oh, this is my topic." Uh,
Mhm.
this is the thing I like to talk about, soapbox, but not preaching. But so my community is growing. I live in one of the fastest growing sections of the country. And so we have, I believe the figure in Northwest Arkansas, I think it's 36 people move here a day. And
Mhm.
so a day. And so even though I live in a very small town, my cat just is determined to make himself known here.
Okay,
Sorry about
that's alright.
my community is a small outskirts. It's not in the interstate corridor, but where I live, we're really seeing an overflow of that. That people that don't want to live in the bigger towns, and as people
Mhm.
are moving in, so they're moving into the smaller towns. Well, that means the smaller towns are growing, but as they're growing, I mean, literally, when I say growing, every census we double. And
Mhm.
so, but none of the groups were talking to each other. People would, and then they weren't planning together. They were working together. And so then
Mhm.
the pandemic hit, and we realized we didn't really have any media that covered us unless something weird happened. We didn't have a newspaper. We didn't have any centralized piece of information,
Mhm.
any centralized hub where people could find resources. They could find out about what's available in town. And so we started Elkins Community Network to be literally that network of information where we create events that people can learn about their community. We create directories so they can learn what businesses we have here. We've
Mhm.
created different ways for people to connect and get engaged in their community. Because as we grow, we don't want to lose that small town feel. We don't want to
That's right.
lose that feeling of Um, Everyone knows everybody. I feel like I belong here. We don't want to take that away just because it grows. So as you scale a rural community, you've got to have
Mhm.
those systems in place so that people can feel connected and they know where they can go for that information. And so my part in that, well, I'm the president of the organization, but my main function is we do a monthly newsletter, and all it is blurbs about, the Cub Scouts are doing this event, the library's doing this event. We've got
Mhm.
baseball signups coming. We've got, um, and it's not a newspaper, as in we don't cover it like old, news that has already happened, because
Mhm.
it's only once a month. It's all things coming up so that people know and that they can participate if they so choose.
Oh,
And so
wow.
that's something I get very excited about, clearly. But then that's for my community. But then we all have different communities or tribes or, whatever word you want to use, to discuss, anything that you have something in common. Like I belong to blogger communities where that's a big thing, that we all have a blog, a personal blog.
Mhm.
Well,
Mhm.
I'm also a member of the disability community, because, as I said, I was born with spina bifida, and I also am a member. They kind of work together, but chronic illness is different than disability, but it's basically health stuff.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
so I realized there was a lot of things that the able-bodied world will do and say that they think they're doing something kind, or they think that they're doing something right, and actually it's pretty offensive and even and sometimes even hurtful. And
Wow.
so, and so I kept hearing people complain, well, why are they doing this? Blah, 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 blah. I was like, well, has anyone told them that they shouldn't do that? And so,
Mm.
and I realized once I became a full-time wheelchair user, because I used to be able to walk. I just realized you can't see below. Um, I used to be able to walk even though I was disabled. I walked with leg braces, and so I could get around a lot easier. Well, once I started using a wheelchair full time, I realized, even though, yes, we have the Americans with Disabilities Act, there's so many ways to get around it, and there's so many ways that it doesn't make the world accessible to everybody. And so
Mm.
I just didn't realize that. They thought, oh,
Mhm.
we have this, Civil Rights Act. We have, or not act, but we have this law that's supposed to protect the civil rights of people with disabilities, and they just assumed that that took care of it. Well,
Mm.
there's so much more work to do. And so, but I don't want to be that angry person that shouts people down. That's not
Right.
me. And that doesn't solve any problems. And
Right.
so, just through my own vulnerability and letting people get to know, because that's how we learn. We learn if we experience something ourselves, or if someone we love and care about experiences it, right? And
Mhm.
so that's when we can really see the world through someone else's eyes. That's what I
Wow.
say. Don't put yourself in someone else's shoes. You're not going to see
Yeah.
their story. Look at the
No.
world through their eyes.
Yeah.
And so the only way to do that is communication.
That's
And
right.
so, that's what I do with the disability advocacy, is just helping people understand this. Okay, for example, this is a real common issue with handicap parking, or something that people may not think, like backing up your truck, to where your back tires hit the curb. Well, then your truck bed hangs over and blocks the sidewalk.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, a
Yeah.
lot of people don't think of that. And
A lot
it's
of
not
people.
that they're being selfish, they're not being jerks, they just don't think about it, so they don't know to not do that. And
Right.
so I'm trying to raise awareness just by showing how it affects me and how it affects people I know. But
Mhm.
doing it in a gentle way, because people, you catch more flies with honey, and
Yes.
so yelling at people isn't gonna get anywhere. So I just try to show them in a loving way. But then I've also learning to stick up for myself, and so I've learned, and others, and I've learned to, um, get pretty firm about certain things,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
just, say it pretty
Well, I'm
firmly.
learning a lot just listening to you. I didn't think about, just like you said with the whole backup thing, because when you think disability and wheelchair, you think that maybe you kind of want to think, because I don't think everybody's doing it. Everything's wheelchair accessible, and it doesn't really make you stop to think until you are put in those shoes. I guess I would
Well,
say
you wouldn't
about the
believe
small
me.
things.
Well, like for example, my husband and I went to a restaurant recently, and they had 2 rooms. So they had, you go in, you have 2 rooms, and then but then the rest of it you have to go upstairs to get to. You have to go up like 2 or 3 stairs. Well, they
Hmm.
rented out the 2 rooms that I could get into, so they were not accessible to the public because they were rented out. Well, that meant that we couldn't stay and eat at their restaurant because the only way that was open to the public had stairs.
Mm.
So, I mean,
Wow.
they lost 2 customers that night,
Well, you
and
know
not out of
what?
anger, it was because I literally couldn't eat there.
Yeah, because it was no way for you to possibly, right. And
Well,
I have to
they
admit,
were
I have to raise my
volunteering.
hand and say I don't think about small things like that until you just brought it to my attention. So having somebody in the community that's voicing that stuff, but not doing it, as you said, with oppression, but just bringing awareness. It does stop to make people think. I mean, because my brain is swirling around of all the many different times that I've been somewhere and just didn't think about the small stuff, as you just said.
Right, right.
Well, definitely. I'll be more mindful now. I think I will.
Well,
I
see, that's
know I
the
will.
thing.
I
I
I'm an overthinker.
I'm so converted, yet another person. I
I
love it when people
know.
tell me now, and sometimes it almost makes me feel bad. They're like, "Everywhere I go now, I see all the places," and I was like, "Okay, don't let it rob your joy. Be
Right.
observant. I don't let it rob my joy."
Well, I am an overthinker, but I do think that for me, I will be more mindful now.
Well, good. Thank you.
I would be more mindful, and I'm always getting on my husband, so I'll make sure he's more aware as well. Because we do need those small things, especially in our community. I do want to go back to you talking about not only accessibility and being more mindful of people with disabilities, but how you form that community, especially during the pandemic when everybody all over the world was so out of sorts, out of different things, food, toiletries, um,
It's
trying
like,
to find. I never saw it this way until the pandemic. We didn't do too much communicating, but the pandemic forced us to stay in the house and find other ways and other means to communicate. So, how did that idea pop in your head during the most critical time that we were having? Because it was a critical town, and you spoke about being in a small town. I am also inside of a small town, and it's old money. And,
mhm,
for us lower class or middle class, I consider myself a little bit lower class now than I was. Um, it affected some of us differently. I could remember my husband saying to his boss, um, recently when one of our vehicles broke down. He said, "Well, Will, why won't you get your truck fixed or get your Dodge fixed?" And he said, I looked at my boss and I told him, spending $200 for me is like you just spending $2,000. I watch you go buy materials for us to use and you spend $2,000 like it's water. $200 for us, it means $200 for us. Every dollar is accounted for. We do have a third vehicle, so that's not at the top of our priorities. I think the pandemic made some of us realign our priorities. There goes that word. It made us
right.
realign our priorities and how we wanted life to look for ourselves after the pandemic. And I wouldn't even say after because a lot of people are still going through it. A lot of the anger and the hostility that's still floating around in the air. It was kind of like someone opened up Pandora's box and forgot to shut it, and some
Mhm,
people can contain their self and some people can't. So the acts of kindness, it was there, but I think it's now hit or miss.
right. Well, and it's interesting you bring from a different perspective. Um, Back to that, what I was talking about is reframing, realigning, and renewing. And not that I'm trying to overdo my own R's, but
No,
people
please feel
kept saying
free.
all throughout the pandemic, people kept saying, "I want to go back to normal. I want to go back to normal." and they resented the idea of a new normal, which I understand because to them, new normal meant chaos. But
Mhm.
why can't we realign? Because there's no way that any of us were unaffected by the pandemic.
Mhm.
My husband and I mean, we actually, in an odd way, our struggle was actually also our privilege. My husband is an essential worker, and so he actually went from, not only did he not lose his job, he went to working 50 to 55-hour weeks, and so I hardly ever saw him, and that was really
Mhm.
hard. It
Mhm.
was really hard on him physically, and just our family. It was just hard, and
Mhm.
so, but we were privileged that he still had a job. So that
Mhm.
was, but it was still a struggle there. So, but now I don't see how we could ever go back to way that we were. The way that we were produced the chaos that we are seeing now. So why should we not learn from what we're doing now instead of being constantly bickering at each other? Let's
Mhm.
learn from this and
Mhm.
realign things and put things into a new place. Yes, the new normal that's better than what it was before instead of more crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. I do think so, and like you, ours was kinda vice versa. I was the essential worker. I worked for a hub for the post office, so we carried a letter. I carried a
Mhm.
letter around in my car to be out after, hours when they said, "We've got a" what is it they put on it? I can't read the word
The
will
curfew.
escapes me now. Curfew. When they put a curfew, I still had to be there, and I often told people the pandemic didn't really affect me that much because I still had to go to work. The only thing
Mhm.
different for me is my new norm was I had to wear a mask. I had to wear this letter. I had to take this letter everywhere I went because our curfew was at 5 p.m. every day for a long while, and my husband was out of work. So I was potentially the breadwinner, and not only the breadwinner, I ended up getting hurt during the pandemic, and I
Yeah,
had 3 back surgeries from 2019 all the way up to 22. So
right.
that pretty much hurt us. The pandemic financially didn't hurt us going through it. It was after the fact. It was after 2022 when I could no longer work because of the surgeries, and I was able to sit back and just kinda look at everything that was going on, the things that I didn't pay a whole lot of attention to, the news, people, friends, family members, and actually listen to someone else's story.
Right.
That was another reason, I did the podcast. Just hearing so much and it almost makes you feel bad sometimes because you're somewhere in the back of your mind, especially if you have a heart. And I was complaining about what? And I always say that to myself, and I was complaining about what? And I think my aunt tells me all the time, she said, you know what, you beat yourself up more than God. Because I'm always thinking about the next step, the next move. What can I do to help someone else? Sometimes I blamed it on maybe I'm doing it to stop thinking about my problems. So helping somebody else gives me something to hold on that maybe I can make it through. But we live and we learn. And I do think that everybody was affected by the pandemic, whether they were overworked or underworked or completely lost their job, and definitely lost loved ones during this time. I also, as a believer, I do feel like, and this is the question I have for you next. Um, what Bible verse in particular sticks out to you as a believer, wrapping it up with your personal experiences as a writer, disability, the community? What sticks out for you, and what would you like to see happen in the Christian community as we move forward to our new normal?
So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna pull this up so I can read it. I don't know why, but I like to read it instead
Oh,
of just
yeah.
quote it. My life verse is Micah 6:8, and it says, "He has shown you, O man, what is good, and what does the Lord require of you? To act justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God." So to me, those are my marching orders. If my That's what my core values are based on. If I can't align something with my mission statement that is built based on that verse, then it's not an appropriate venture for me. And so
Mhm.
that's more overarching long term. Right
Mhm.
now, with this whole trust thing going on, um, I like Micah 62. My pastor actually brought that up and he had a great sermon. I mean, I think he looked at me really concerned later. I just had tears streaming down my face because I was like, this, I was supposed to be here for this sermon. So Psalm 62 talks about, like, the first two verses are, truly my soul finds rest in God. My salvation comes from him. Truly he is my rock and my salvation. He is my
Mhm.
fortress. I will never be shaken. And then it goes on. So that is a statement right there, right?
Mhm.
And it
Mhm.
down, and you talk in 5, 6, and 7, it says, yes, my soul, find rest in God. My hope comes from him. Truly, he is my rock and my salvation. He is my fortress. I will not be shaken.
Mhm.
My salvation and my honor depend on God. He is my mighty rock, my refuge. That's the writer kind of giving himself a pep talk, like a self.
Mhm.
The first was a
Mhm.
declaration. The other one's like,
Mhm.
no, really, no, really, he's my rock. No, no, it's good.
Mhm.
It was
It's
that. But then if you keep going further, Psalm 62 is not that long.
yeah.
Um, let's see, it's
I read it out of the NIV. Well, I memorized the not the NIV, the New King James version of it,
mhm.
and that was one of the first psalms that I memorized
Oh,
because
how
I love
interesting.
the
I didn't know
fact,
that. I didn't know
yeah,
that.
and
So the
it started out with truly my soul cries out to you, and that's the
right.
new Testament version, and I that for some reason that was my mission statement in 2023, that you are my salvation, you are my defense. I will not be greatly
Right.
moved.
Mhm.
So,
I
we're
love that.
kindred spirits here, girl.
Yes. Well, and finally, I want you to look at 11 and 12. It's one thing God has spoken, two things I have heard. Power belongs to you, God, and with you, Lord, is unfailing love, and you reward everyone according to what they have done. So that is God's
Mhm,
promise to us. So
mhm.
that's what I'm kind of resting in right now. Um, that's so it's more of a passage than a verse, but
Oh, yeah.
uh,
I kinda sum it
I
up
love that
in
they needed a little bit of self talk, a
oh,
little bit of self.
yeah, and I sum it up is, God is a rewarder of those who diligently seek him, first and
Mhm,
foremost, and as well as he will reward us according to his riches and glory, for 2, and
mhm,
3, our heart has to be right. He says, and I always try to incorporate now, in fact, I just said this morning in Morning Inspirations, you know, for me, I feel like we should incorporate at least Proverbs in our daily reading. And
mhm.
how do you read Proverbs? You read it like the days of the month fall. So the
Right.
day was the eighth day. Yesterday, he talked about wisdom, making wisdom your sister and understanding your next of kin. Today, he broke that down, what wisdom looked like. And yesterday in Proverbs 7, he talked about etching the words of his daily bread across the tables of your heart. How much more he would do for you? How will you find comfort? How will you make wisdom your friend, understanding your next to kin? And, it gives you something to think about. But again, Proverbs is a book of wisdom, and you can go back and you can start to apply the things like we read in Psalm 62. Psalms 91 happens to be one of my favorite verses, he who dwells in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the almighty shadow of God. That thing right there tells me as long as I come into my secret place and I spend some time, as soon as I wake up and before I go to sleep, I'm covered by the shadow of the Almighty. He's right there with me, and it reminds me to keep my eyes on heavenly things. And not only that, you just nailed it when you read that different part of Psalms, David said, I had to encourage myself in the Lord. So David was a man after God's own heart. So if David had to do that, what must we do? We have to keep encouraging ourselves. And sometimes encouragement doesn't look like what we're doing right now, fellowshipping with one another. Sometimes we have to encourage ourselves, find a word or a scripture to hold on to.
Right. Exactly.
Exactly. Well, this has been great, Jamie. I love talking to you. I wish you much success with your book. You are a friend of 12th Street Talk Back. We do morning inspirations Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Come on over, take a listen. I did it with us. Pin it to the show. So if you feel like you heard something and you want to come up and speak about it, you're more than welcome. When your book comes out, if you feel like you want to come back to the show, to promote your book, you are more than welcome. Is there anything else you want to tell my listeners where to find you, what you got going on? Where can they find you if they want to follow you after today's episode?
Well, I have a Jamie Smith author page on Facebook. It's just Jamie Smith, comma author. That's where I share just different aspects of the book, a little bit about faith, a little bit about chronic illness, a little bit about realigning and reframing. And so just all those different components, I share memes and information. But also, I have a lot of friends who have been interested in watching the journey. And so I talk about the process of the book and everything like that. So that's probably the best place to connect.
Oh, wow. Well, that's great. Listen, I'll tell you what, real quick. I don't know what the big guy's doing up there, but literally everybody that I have take talking to since I converted my show over have been authors,
Really?
book. My
Okay.
last 3, my last 3 guests were authors, and it was just like bam, back to back to back. Everybody's writing a book, and everybody's story is so different, so unique. So you can buy each individual's book because it talks about something totally different. So I don't know if he's trying to tell me to get y'all community of authors together together or what to make an impactful statement because I think that's what we need in our community right now. We still need a healing. I
Hmm.
think that there's still a lot of hurting out there, but I also think, and this is just in my mind, he is raising up a particular people, his rams in the bush, just for a moment like this. It's not gonna go back to the way it looked before the pandemic. Some things are great, some things are not so great, but he has the strong ones that he's raising up for other people
Hmm.
like that's how I
Hmm.
see it. That's how I see it, guys. I can go all day talking about our Heavenly Father. Thank you guys so much for joining myself and Jamie Smith. You guys be on the lookout. Follow her on our Facebook page. I'll have all her information pinned in the show notes. Is there anything else you want to leave my guests today, Jamie?
Not that I can think of.
Not that you can think of. Well, thank you so much. And blessings, blessings, blessings to you. Please don't be a stranger. Anything that you have in the
Well,
future, you're more than welcome to come back. Thank you guys for tuning
very much
in
enjoyed.
to the
Sorry.
sh Thank you. Thank you, thank you. Thank you guys for tuning into the show. Don't forget on Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays, we have our morning inspirations at 11:30 a.m. right here on our Facebook Live channel as well as our YouTube channel. If you guys haven't already subscribed to the show, please go over, subscribe to the show, as well as if you guys have not already subscribed on Spotify, Ankle, Spotify, Apple, Amazon, Good Pods, please head on over and subscribe to the show. You may not be able to watch us live, but we promise to bring you some great, great information if you listen to us by audio. Peace and blessings to you all. And remember this weekend, if you can't do anything else, give someone a kind word, but a hot meal goes a long, long way, as well as get yourself into a Bible based church this weekend and a fellowship with like minded people. Peace and blessings to you all.